on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
Honestly, I was making more money indie than I was traditional. They asked if I was interested in doing more books in that same series, and they wanted to know if I wanted to start a new series, and I said, no, I'm not giving you any more IP because I understand how valuable it is now, and there were no other options when I started.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers, no more barriers, no one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome. It is the Self-Publishing Show, the place to be to learn everything you need to know about being an indie author or just an author in this modern world. I'm James Blatch.
And I'm Mark Dawson.
We talk about all trad, writing, craft. In fact, today we're talking about cozy mystery, which pertains to anybody, whether you've got to deal with Penguin, Random House, soon to be Penguin, Schuster and Random House Schuster, whatever they're going to be, if that goes through, and if you're going to publish from your bedroom, which we sort of think is the right way to do, but not the right way for everyone, that's for sure.
No, not for everyone, but it's certainly the right way for us. So, and probably, let's be honest, most of the people listening to this podcast are at least interested in the dark side.
They are, and I have published a hardback version of my book, which just this week, 10 minutes ago, which just goes to show how far indie has come in recent years. I now have a paperback, an ebook, and a hardback version of my book. I was invited into the beta, Amazon KDP running a beta for hardback, I think in Europe, UK and the United States at the moment. Seems to be looking at the pricing. So I got busy with that last night. Found it pretty easy. The manuscript is the same. If you're the same trim size as your paperback, the manuscript PDF is the same. Thing to be careful of is your ISBN number. You might need to update if it's a different one for hardback, if you've got your own ISBNs. The cover is different, so it's slightly bigger, the cover for the hardback version, and you will need access to the, Stuart luckily handily gave me the Photoshop file, so I had all his layers and was able, but I ended up manipulating some of the individual assets like the title and plane and description, and doing a little bit of trial and error with the proof side of it. So that was a little bit fiddly. So for some people, that will be a job for their cover designer. And I think getting the dimensions is quite difficult. I have written them down actually, the dimensions for hardback, because if you Google, you can't really find much information on this at the moment because it's so new and it's in beta. You also signed a confidentiality agreement. Hopefully I'm not breaching that. But for other people, well, given the dimensions, I'm going to risk this. Oh. Just giving the dimensions of what your cover design is going to need if you're in the beta program and about to publish. I don't think Jeff's going to phone me tomorrow. It's 14.854 inches by 10.417 inches, which is an inch and a bit bigger actually than the paperback size for the same trim size paperback cover. But of course, with covers, it's not just expanding the canvas to that. You don't want to stretch things. You need to replace things. And then now, a couple of things. It's just a little bit different, the process. And I might be breaching confidentiality by going into any of those details. But I know a lot of you have been invited into the beta and are doing this as well. So I'd be interested to hear your experiences. You can post below wherever you're listening to how you're getting on with that. And of course, I have ordered a copy. It would be nice to have. I mean, you've had this experience, but this again will be a new experience for me of having a hardback version of my book in my hands. There we go.
There we go.
Because you've sold out.
Yes,
you sold out to the man, so you didn't do that cover work yourself.
No, I didn't. No, I haven't. It's not quite selling out. It's a slightly different deal than as I've mentioned before. But no, I didn't do those covers. And the second book was released into stores about 10 days ago, I think it was. So it's been quite fun to go to supermarkets, mostly Tesco's and Asda, around here and see how, see the book in the shelves, and encouragingly getting pictures from readers showing books not on the shelves, which is always nice. When my mum tried to get it in Lowestoft and found a sticker that said temporarily out of stock.
Well, you're the local hero in Lowestoft.
Yeah, so it was nice to see that. But it's lovely to. There is something about a hardback book. I mentioned before when I'm reading Game of Thrones at the moment, and I've got the Folio Society editions, which are just gorgeous. They are really gorgeous. They've only published 3 of them, so I know that they're going to work through them all. But I don't think the 4th book is out yet, so I don't know if I want to read it in paperback. I'm quite enjoying the more opulent edition.
I don't think I've kept in touch with this, but has Martin actually written the last one yet?
Well, the last 2. No, he hasn't.
Still hasn't. Wow. Huh. I guarantee whatever he does, it'll be a better job than the TV series of the last 2. The last series.
Well, probably, yes. I mean, that's usually the case. I didn't hate it as much as other people do, but
I didn't like it. It was rushed.
It was rushed, that's for sure. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting, and we're ticking off the things that you can't do as an indie, and I know there's still that, walking through an airport and seeing your book for sale there is quite difficult for indies. It's not impossible. You are doing it now. Louise Ross, I see her books in my local bookshops, and there's others. But all of those barriers are coming down, and that's happening quickly. I'll tell you one interesting thing. So I got an email, a very nice email this week from the people who run the Avro Vulcan, which is an aircraft that's behind me if you're watching on YouTube, a picture of it, and appears in my book, featured very heavily. And there was one flying version of this. They resurrected it, and actually I kind of know a lot of the stuff because I covered it for the BBC a lot, but
yeah, I've seen it flying.
Yeah, so they've got it flying for a couple of years, cost millions of pounds, and a very, very enthusiastic team of former Vulcan pilots and engineers looked after it. It then got to the end of that period where it's just too expensive to sustain it. It's now being preserved up in the Midlands here in the UK, and a team look after it. And I got an email from them saying, one of our team has read your book, wanted to say it was the most authentic experience he'd read of working on the Vulcan. They loved it, and they've put in an order for 30 copies to sell.
Well done. That's great.
In their bookshop and online, and they've asked if I can do some signed versions they can charge some more for. So I'm going to do them at cost to support the project, which I think is a good thing for the book to do anyway. But interestingly, now here's my question for this. The cheapest way I can supply it to them is the Amazon print copies, the author copies. Which are about £5.36, something like that, plus postage, which isn't too much with Amazon. And I think the IngramSpark one is more than that. I think I'd have to order quite a big number to get it down to £5.36. So I think if I'm reading that right, is that correct? Is that other people's experience? I mean, I don't know if you have any experience of this, but it seems an odd way of doing it, getting Amazon author copies. I thought that's what IngramSpark was for, but it seems Ingram's more expensive than getting the author copies via Amazon.
Yeah, I've never used Ingram, so I'm not the person to ask about that. But yeah, if I want, so there's a store on my my website now for readers to get signed copies of the Milton books, and that's how I get them. I'll just order 20 at a time.
Yeah,
and it is it depends on how big the book is, but it will vary from depending on the page size. £5 is around about the average, I suppose. And they'll send them in a box, and then I'll sign them and sell them. But that is the only other way to do it, Ingram aside, which I can't really comment on, is to do a big offset print run.
Yes, print 5,000.
Then you would get it down. Yeah. You would get it down a lot less than £5, but you'd have to spend quite a lot. You would be in the high hundreds, low thousands to get that price down. So probably not ideal. And what would likely happen is you end up with 1,000 books in your shed.
Yes.
That you can't shift. So
and also you then find a typo.
That is also possible, yeah. Well, certainly going to be the case. So, yeah, I think it's not perfect, but the author copies are much cheaper. There is enough. You can make a margin on those.
Yeah, and you can order up to 1,000, I think, aren't you? Is that in one go? Or is that in total?
I think it's in one go, but I think the most I've ordered is about 100.
Yeah.
So I don't think I've done any more than that.
And I'm having lots of these author experiences now. I'm going to bore you to death. All this stuff you've forgotten happens when the first time you're an author. So I had an aggressive reader who'd got to sort of 75, 80% through the book and just posted a comment on one of the ads. Well, I
saw that.
Did you? Disappointing that authors don't research things properly, and really quite aggressive tone. And what she'd discovered is that an RAF station had closed that I mentioned in a phone call, and that I got a model of a camera wrong by 4 years. It was And she was right about that. She was wrong about the main thing she complained about, which is that I'd said there were NCOs flying the Vulcan. There weren't. I didn't say that. She misunderstood a conversation in the book. But I think the model of the camera, anyway, so I responded politely and said, oh, thank you very much. And I've amended that. And actually I chose Duxford because my dad was based there, but he was there 6 years before. And I didn't, obviously, forgot to check that squadron hadn't moved on, but it had. So I checked that. And then she was incredibly polite and also got towards the end of the book and said, it's really good. And I appreciate how much work goes into it. And I thought, that's such an internet experience, isn't it? That somebody's first way of talking to you, when they're not really talking to you, they're just posting to strangers on the internet, is to be all kind of aggressive and highfalutin. And then when they realize they're talking to the author, they suddenly are appreciative of all the work that you've done. And it's just slightly frustrating, but that's fine. When you're in the public domain a little bit, we know this from SPF, that happens.
Yeah, I saw that this morning, actually. I know that comment, but I saw a post in 20 Books. I think you saw as well, with someone who'd taken one of the courses and had really good success. And I didn't know they're posting it. This happens quite a lot. People will post their experience. Not always positive. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't work out, and they'll post about that. But someone, I don't remember the name now, so apologies if they're listening. But they had they're doing well with the ads course. And then one of the first comments was, "Has Mark paid you to say this?"
Yes.
No. That was completely unethical. We would never do that, and it wouldn't even occur to us to do something like that. It's just an unsolicited positive experience. But yeah, it's frustrating that people immediately think the worst. But on the other hand, I can understand it. It's people have been burned before by scammy stuff, and people do that kind of stuff, I guess. But not us. And it was quite nice to see quite a lot of people actually were like, they would never do this, and that is not an unusual experience with the courses, which was very nice.
No, well, that was her reason for thinking that we'd paid them, because she quite often sees people saying how good Mark's courses are. So that's the reason we must be paying people to go into these books.
It could be that the courses are actually quite good.
Well, that's the other possibility that hadn't really been considered at this stage. Anyway, a lot of people weighed in, and I also pointed out that we do not pay anybody to say that our courses are good. We obviously pay for advertising in the normal ethical way, but we have lots of people who voluntarily get house invaded actually by me and John. We turn up with our cameras, and they, in fact, we end up winners in every way, because we then drink their coffee,
you drink all their booze,
eat their donuts, and if we live long enough, if we stay long enough, we drink their booze as well, and then we walk away. We never see them again. That's not true. We see lots of people again. Yeah, that's the way that goes. Problems of success. Authors out there dealing.
It's a nice problem to have.
Yeah, if you're dealing with readers, and we do see this, what I mentioned, about an aggressive reader, and people say, "Well, how should I respond to this?" I think always politely, or always enjoy having the moral high ground, for that's the right way to do it. And just remember that people are engaging with the work of art that you've produced, if you want to call it that, and that's a positive thing for you as a creator, even if not everyone's going to like everything as well. So that's. Art's not doing its job, is it? If everyone likes it,
no, you're never gonna please everyone. That's completely fine. No, you'll. I've seen a couple of. I saw another comment actually of someone on one of your ads who said they read halfway through and returned it. Sorry, Mr. Blatch, they said. But that's fine. These, I mean, that one, you probably just delete that comment, because I
didn't notice it actually. So look it up.
It's an ad that you've paid for. Yeah, so I mean, these things happen. But yeah, if you're going to respond, you've got to be polite, because the internet is, as they say, written in ink.
Yeah.
So once it's out there, So definitely be polite and think about trying to divorce yourself. That's another one of those situations where you're not responding as the artist, you're responding as the owner of the business that published it. So you want to make sure that your readers, your customers, don't feel like you're a jerk, because they won't buy from you again, and anyone else who sees that comment also won't buy from you again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. And we mentioned one thing we haven't talked about in recent weeks is we have not talked about the Apple iOS revision which is affecting Facebook ads. And the reason for that is there's a lot being written about it. There's a lot of uncertainty about the practical reality. So I think we're going to let it settle down. And if there's something to report, we will definitely talk about it. I will say there was an odd experience. You flagged it up to me yesterday. You saw one of my ads in the wild for Fuse Books without an image, which is actually impossible to do. And I checked the ad, it had 5 possible images. It was a dynamic creative ad. And I sort of wonder if that might be to do, because it was on iOS, and I could see that the, something I hadn't realized actually, Mark, is that...
No.
What?
That wouldn't be the reason.
Well, you say that, but what was the reason then?
I don't know. It's a glitch. I don't think. I mean, it may be connected to the changes that have been made because of iOS. But iOS is an audience. It's a tracking issue. It's nothing to do with creative.
But it is a big new release of iOS. But anyway, I hadn't noticed before, and it's changed my mind a little bit on what to do about this. Is that the display URL? So you put your URL in this case to an Amazon product page. And then I normally leave the display URL blank because it pre-fills with Amazon.com or Amazon.co.uk. Mm-hmm. And if you fill it in, there's always a chance you put Amazon.com when you're in the UK, etc. So you may as well just leave it. But I hadn't realised that if it's on an Apple device as displayed in that, it comes up with something weird saying go through to the Amazon app. Well, I don't use the Amazon app.
Sometimes, doesn't always. I've seen that a few times.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I'd rather not have that. The Amazon app I find is a little bit flaky on my phone. I prefer to use a browser.
No, you don't want them to go to an app. They want them to go straight to the website.
So the URL wouldn't go there anyway. It should go to the website. But I'm going to pre-fill the display URL from now on and just say Amazon.co.uk or Amazon.com and make sure that's not left for chance. Right. Okay. So there is a sort of roundup of what's going on in the world of us. And we have now got an interview with Sarah Rosette. Now, Sarah's an old friend of SPF. She does a little bit of work for us here and there. She's a bit of an expert on pre-order using IngramSpark. But mainly, I really enjoyed talking to her about cozy mystery. I love a bit of cozy mystery. It's a huge genre when you think about it. Think about the TV programs and films that are geared around it. We had, Knives Out last year, which I thought was brilliant. Film. I think it's going to be a sequel of that as well. Agatha Christie, one of the great writers of...
Two sequels.
Well, Agatha Christie, one of the great writers of all time, of course. And Sherlock Holmes probably would fall into that category, I think, of cozy mystery. Sarah writes modern, contemporary cozy mystery. She's very eloquent about this whole genre. And so here is Sarah, and then Mark and I will be back for a chat.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Sarah Rosette, thank you very much indeed for joining us. A friend to SPF, you've done a little bit of our coursework for us in the past. You're a bit of an IngramSpark person, so we're going to talk about that a bit today. And I think also series.
Yes, love series. Love to write in series. Love to read series.
Well, it's such a key part, isn't it, for becoming commercially successful. And as somebody who is on the cusp of publishing their first book, look, I even have it.
Yes.
Which is very exciting. Thank you very much. I am into book 2 and thinking very much about the series stuff. So I'll pick your brains like I always use the interviews mercilessly for my own benefit.
Yes,
okay, so
mine as well.
Yeah, exactly. Right, let's start off with a bit about you. Why don't you tell us your background, your writing career so far?
Okay, well, I've always loved mysteries, always loved reading books, and just the idea of writing books for a living was my dream. And but of course, I did not do that when I went to school. I got a degree in English, as one does. And then I thought that my writing would be on the side and I would have a full-time job, maybe teaching, doing something like that. But I got married and moved around the country. I was a military spouse and I was writing on the side. And I had an idea for a cozy mystery, which I don't know if you're familiar with the genre. It's very Agatha Christie-like, Jessica Fletcher. So very light mysteries with a puzzle. And so I came up with an idea for that and I pitched it to an agent and got an agent. This was back in the traditional published days, was pretty much the only way to go. So I found an agent, she sold it, we got it published, and that became my first series. And it was about a military spouse who moved around the country, and I used all the background, like for a cozy, you kind of need a little hook of something different or unique, a hobby, a profession that's interesting that people would like to read about. And a lot of people don't know what it's like to be a military family and move around. So I kind of used that as background. And then I made my character a professional organizer. So she was always in people's homes and able to search for clues and stuff. So that was my first series. And I wrote 10 books in that series. And about 2010, I started having readers asking me, when is it coming out in ebook? And they were very interested in that. And I was completely oblivious and not into it at all. And I had no idea what was coming with the Kindle and all that. And then I began to hear about friends who were making good money in ebooks. And I was like, oh, maybe I should check this out. Because,
so what sort of year was this when you were considering it?
That was 2010,
okay,
2020-ish, 10-ish.
Yep.
So I decided I wanted to try it. And I tested it with a couple of short stories. And I was like, okay, this is legitimate. And it's not that hard. I mean, it's a learning curve. But so I didn't have any IP that I owned. So I essentially had to start over because all those books that I'd written were, with the publisher, and they were not interested in giving them up. So I wrote a new series, and I launched it in 2012 and was wide from the beginning because my cozy books were wide. And I figured, I have readers on all the retailers, so that's what I'll do. And that's what I did. I've done that series. It was kind of like my book that I always wanted to write that no one was very interested in. And so I wrote that book, made it into a series. And then I thought, if I did just a cozy, like a straight cozy, I might do, have better sales. And so I wrote a new series about a woman who's a location scout, and she goes to England to search for locations to film a new Jane Austen adaptation, because that's like all the kind of things I'm interested in. And it allowed me to indulge my, country home love of English country homes, So, and that series did better. And so I've just continued to indie publish and continue to write new series. And my most recent one is a historical 1920s series set in England, which I love golden age fiction. And that's kind of where that one came from.
And you've stayed wide?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about cozy mystery just for a little bit, because I'm interested in these series, different genres and the beats and so on. And you wrote 10 books based on the same character, the same sort of. There's a series in the UK called, I think it's Agatha Raisin, which is kind of the new sort of
very similar.
Yeah. So you get this one character who happens to be at the centre of a case that needs solving every week on TV, and you have that with your 10-book series. When you set out to do those stories, when you're plotting them, or I don't know whether you do plot them, you have to hit beats at certain points in a cozy mystery for it basically to qualify as such.
Right, yeah. And I think the most important thing about a cozy is the tone. It's got to be light, and it's more of a puzzle. It's like, can we figure out who did it? So you don't emphasize like there is a murder, but you don't emphasize the goriness of it, or you don't linger on that. But yes, you have to have a dead body. Usually it's someone who's not well liked. So there's not a lot of angst or sorrow over this person being dead. And then of course, because they're not well liked, there's lots of possibilities of things that people who might not have liked them, who might have wanted to do away with them. So like you have to kind of have when some people begin their cozies with the dead body on page 1, I don't like to do that. I kind of like to have a little intro, kind of set up the world. And then for me, the dead body is usually at the end of Act 1. And that's what launches the sleuth into the mystery. And then you've got your clues and red herrings. And then you can have, like at the end, you can have the like Poirot gathering all the suspects together and going through, you could have done it. But then here's the true answer. You can do that. I don't know that that's done quite as much as it was.
There was a big Agatha Christie thing, wasn't it? To have the room full at the end. And I think they played on it recently with Knives Out, the film, the comedy film. But
So Knives Out has a ton of cozy elements in it.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's funny how you can deal with murder in one way or another way. And the tone is, I mean, this is something Mark, John and I did in our previous life, watching films and giving them film certificates. And it was very interesting occasionally when a director got that tone wrong. Aimed at young teens and just got the level of gore and violence wrong. It's you really noticed it. Okay, well it's a great genre. It's a great genre fiction to be read by large numbers of people, isn't it? Because it's a kind of go-to. So the TV series the books are go-to books for lots of people. I imagine quite a competitive genre.
Yeah. I'm in like contemporary cozy, and historical mystery has a lot of cozy elements to it. So a lot of people feel like it's cozy as well. There's also paranormal cozies, witch cozies, and that is huge and very competitive. I've stayed out of that because I don't think I can write fast enough. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Very interesting. People are like, didn't know that existed.
Yeah. Is that like Sabrina? Would that count as a witch cozy? So I can reference.
Kind of light, and but there are paranormal elements, like somebody has like a gift, or there's things going on that are otherworldly, and so that's very big in KU. There's a lot of, and so I don't write fast enough to do those.
How fast do you write?
Well, I went back and I looked, and I've averaged about, for my indie books, I've averaged about 2.5 books per year.
Okay.
So, because in some years there have been more, but other years there have been less. So it's, I aim for 3. If I can get 3 written, they don't necessarily all come out that same year, but if I can get 3 written, because I like pre-orders, I like long pre-orders now. So sometimes I'll write one, but it won't come out for several months.
That's interesting. That's a Mark Dawson technique at the minute. We're talking very much about launches.
Yes.
So the long pre-order. Okay, so you had your relationship with your publisher, and how, out of interest, how did that come to an end? Did you just not ask for another contract, or did you have to deliver a couple more books to finish that off? Or?
I did. I had to deliver several books, and so for a while I technically hybrid. I was writing one for my publisher, and then I was writing others for myself, kind of because I wasn't sure how everything would go. So I didn't want to totally drop one for the other, but I was making more money indie than I was traditional. And that's very common if you're a mid-list author. And so I've finished off my books with them, and they asked if I was interested in doing more books in that same series. And they wanted to know if I wanted to start a new series. And I said, no, I'm not giving, I didn't say this, but I'm not giving you any more IP, because I understand how valuable it is now. And I didn't understand that. And there were no other options when I started. So,
very familiar story, isn't it? And
yes.
Makes me sad, really, that all that work and effort you put in, and some of those traditional contracts, and it's your thing, but it's not your thing anymore. That's just not you're basically a worker for a publishing organization, and they now own those rights, presumably in perpetuity.
Well, there is a clause that, I can ask for them back at 25 years. Have you heard of that? Right.
Wow.
So that's a long way off, but I can ask for them back then. I mean, if my sales fall below a certain threshold during a royalty period, I can get them back.
Okay.
But so far they haven't done that, and they continue to run ads to them occasionally to boost them up, keep them. Yeah. But I did learn a lot during that, and they helped me get my start. And so when I went indie, I did have an audience, which helped. So, I mean, it wasn't all bad. And I saw how they produce a book and how they, got ideas for marketing, editing, and things that they were not interested in doing for me, that now I can do for myself.
Yeah.
Which I really like.
Okay, well, let's talk about series a bit then. So you had these series. First of all, the 10 that you wrote for the publisher, were they also standalone, a bit like Agatha Christie's? You could pick up any one of them?
Yeah, that's how most of my books are. The mystery itself is self-contained in that book. But then if you're interested in the lives of the characters throughout the series, you probably want to read it in order. And that's what I tell my readers. If you're interested in, who is, dating this other person, or what's happened to the woman who works in the shop downtown, then you probably want to read it in order. But the mysteries themselves are self-contained. And so that way someone can pick it up in the middle of the series and read like a book 7. I find that most mystery readers like to go back to the beginning and read from book 1 on.
This is the difference between series and serial. Is that right? I think serial is the one that should be read in order.
Yes. And if you read it out of order, you're just confused, right?
Yeah. So I'm marketing one of those Robert Story's books, which are definitely serial. Not quite cliffhanger at the end of one book, which is a bit of a no-no, but close to that. You need to read the next book. Does limit your marketing in the future. It's a nice epic thing, and people do like that Lord of the Rings style kind of books that progress this journey. But from a purely commercial point of view, it is a bit more restrictive, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think there are different, this is one thing that I didn't know when I started writing, is that there are different types of series. And so like what I'm writing, I would call a flat arc series, which is like the protagonist doesn't change that much from book to book. And it's like Poirot, Agatha Christie, even James Bond, those books, they're pretty much the same. But the characters around the main characters, those are the ones that change. And by the protagonist being in the story, that's what causes the change. So it's and I didn't realize that when I was trying to write my first books. I was trying to do the hero's journey. And I feel like that's more of a robust character arc where you've got a beginning and your character's at one point, and then at the end of the book or the end of the series, your character has completely changed and it's completely different. And I feel like that's a different structure. So it would have helped me if I had known that when I started writing.
Yeah. It's funny. We were having this conversation the other day about character journeys, and somebody mentioned James Bond and said, well, he doesn't change. I mean, I haven't read all the books, I have to say. I'm like most people familiar with the films. But there's a good point you make there. Probably if we look back at those Bond stories, it's the villain who's on the character journey. And it's actually required almost for the series that Bond is on a fairly even keel throughout. Right. Things happen to him fairly passively, but it's the villain is the one who's the inciter, who thinks one thing's going to happen, who has one motivation, and then things fall apart for them. All those things that happen on the hero's journey. It's funny, isn't it, when you think about it?
Yeah, and the thing to watch out with a flat arc character is the villain may become more interesting than your protagonist. So you kind of have to balance that where they're fascinating but not too fascinating.
Yeah, Darth Vader. And all that. Okay, so that's interesting that you then went into indie, and well, first of all, let's just see how that went for you. That turned into something that was more lucrative fairly quickly for you?
Mine was more like a slow climb. But I was making enough money that I was able to put everything back into the business. And, by the time I had out 2 series, it was going really well. And then when I brought out my third one, the historical, that one has just done great. And I think I just hit the market at the right time. And there's just an interest in that kind of golden age 1920s fiction, which is just, I hit it at the right point. And I went into audiobooks at that time too. And that's become a big portion of my income. But yeah, I'm doing much better indie than I ever did traditionally. And I think part of it is that, I have the option that if I want to do audiobooks, I can. And that was something that my publisher was not interested in doing. And if I want to, try some other format or try and get a BookBub ad, I can do that. Where all that is out of your control when you're indie or traditionally published. So it's like all the frustrations we have with ACX, not being able to control the price and not being able to control certain things. That's the frustrations when you're traditionally published. But you can also say, hey, I don't have to deal with that and go on. If you're that type of person. I'm much more controlling, I guess.
And what are you doing in terms of marketing for your books at the moment?
Well, I have some like low-level AMS ads that I just keep running all the time. I've got some perma-free books. One of my series is perma-free. The other one is $2.99 as an entry point. I'm thinking of dropping that to 99 cents or perma-free. And then I just do ads. Like I get apply to BookBub all the time. Box sets are another thing that I like to do. I don't do a whole lot of, I've dabbled in Facebook ads and I've done okay, but not great. And for the time that it takes, I would almost rather spend that time writing another book. I mean, it's like, I have a hard time. I'm very focused. And so if I'm writing a book, it's hard for me to stop and fiddle with ads and vice versa. So so I've mostly just worked on creating more content and, just kind of getting to know my readers and growing my email list more than anything else.
Putting some books on the shelf, which is such an important part of this. And you're still writing, well, you said you've averaged about 2.5 books a year. So, so just before we move off series then, let me ask a little bit about your plotting now. So your historical mystery series, is that set in the UK or is that USA? That's UK as well.
Yeah.
You love the UK.
Yeah.
You have to come and live here at some point, Sarah.
I would love to.
Yeah.
You got to get out of quarantine and lockdown. And
Yeah. We're getting out of it hopefully at some point. But did you end up here in the military?
No, I visited there several times.
Okay.
Yeah, we were in Europe for a couple of like short-term assignments. So, and I had a whole nother series that grew out of that. It's the one that no one was really interested in. It's the not quite cozy series that based in like Italy and France and different places like that.
Okay. So my question about the series then is when you're plotting, first of all, do you plot out each book in advance or do you, I can see the nodding there.
Yeah.
Do you plot the series out at that point as well? Or do you have half a mind about the series?
In the beginning, I didn't. I had no idea. I just knew I was writing a cozy mystery and cozies are always in a series. And so, of course, it was going to be a series. And I had ideas for the mystery elements in each book, for a couple books ahead, but I didn't have an idea for the character. So now I tend to think about the character as well. I'll figure out, okay, I'll plot each book as I go, but then I also have now I have an overarching, I tend to do it in threes. Like, okay, the historical series, the first 3 books, she's going to be figuring out that she's good at this detective thing, that she's going to kind of become involved in a case, help solve it and go, oh, perhaps this is something that I could do. And so eventually she's going to become like a, private detective to the high society, the elite people that don't want to really call a private detective. So in the next 3 books, she's further along in her journey. And so I have like her kind of entrepreneurial growth. And then of course I've got a romantic subplot. So that's also kind of in 3 arcs. So I tend to think in threes because I thought if the first 3 books do well, then great, I can keep going. If not, I can tie it up there and, go on to another series or something.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good approach for it as well. Like you say, there has to be a series element with cozy mysteries. It's difficult to think of any famous standalone versions of it. It's just doesn't lend itself to it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your writing style, and then I want to talk a little bit about IngramSpark, if that's okay. So your writing style, or your writing process, I should say, rather than style, Sarah. How do you go about your day and writing? How do you do it?
Well, okay, so there's like the ideal, which you would love, and then there's the reality. So like ideally, I would get up, I do dictation. And so I do, 20, 30 minutes of dictation, and then I use Dragon to transcribe that. And then I have like this raw, it's really like some people, I think their dictation comes out much better than mine. Mine is like a mess and I have to go in and clean it up, but it helps me because it gets my thoughts and ideas and everything out of my head onto the page. And then it's easier for me to move things around and edit and clean it up because I don't like a blank page. And so that's why I feel like I have to know where I'm going with the story. That's why I kind of rough out a plot because I don't like not knowing what's going to happen. I feel better if I know what's happening. And it's easier for me to like edit and do things if I have it on the page. So I'll work on that. And usually what I do is I work on fiction for like a couple of months, and then I'll add in, admin and marketing and kind of that's a smaller part of my day during that time. And then when I get done with a book, like I just turned in a book to my editor. So now I'm doing like lots of big projects that I've had on the back burner because I have a hard time like switching during the day. I've tried that where I write in the morning and market in the afternoon, and I'm just not good at it.
Right.
So that's kind of how I do it. And I'm usually a couple hours of creative thinking time, and I'm kind of brain dead. So I'll take a break and try and work out in the afternoon, and then sometimes I'll come back and do email and stuff like that has to be done. But yeah, I tend to kind of go in phases.
Yeah, and that dictation, is that purely for the reason you just stated, which is to get the ideas out and onto the page, or is it for physical reasons where you just don't like the idea of typing all day?
Well, I originally started trying it because I thought it would make it faster for me, and I don't know if it's actually made me faster. It's just I do like it because it does save wear and tear on your hands and back, sitting, and then eye strain too. You're not staring at the computer. But the other thing I've discovered is that if I start with dictation, like I have a little handheld recorder, and I'll make a jot down some notes on what I'm going to talk about that day, and then I'll record. And it keeps me off my computer first thing. So like I don't open my computer and I don't go into email. So it is good. It helps me get the words down, or the really rough ones that need a lot of work.
And your 20 or 30 minutes, how many words does that produce?
Well, if I'm going quickly and I know what I'm saying and I'm speaking quickly, probably about 2,000 to 3,000 words.
Well, that's great.
Sometimes it's very halting though, it's like a sentence period. And then there's like a long, so it can be lower than that, definitely lower.
I keep thinking about dictation. I mean, I've tried it a couple of times, and I know everyone says if you're going to do it, you've got to stick at it and make it work. But I can't get past that. I type and the logic and the flow comes to me. When I'm dictating, it doesn't. It's just a different pace.
It's very, very difficult. And it was really hard for me to get over it. And I felt really weird speaking my words. And I thought, this is so strange, because I'm going to put these down in a book and send it out in the world and people are going to read it. So it shouldn't matter if I say it aloud,
Yeah.
But I kept at it. And I think the reason I did was I just bought a new keyboard, and it's one that's like, I'm not sure, it's Kinesis. So it's like the kind that it's scooped out. It's supposed to be better for your hands. The keyboards are kind of concave.
Yeah.
And so but there were two keys that were in a slightly different place. And it took me about 3 or 4 weeks to get used to that. And it was driving me insane. And I thought, but I did get used to it. And I thought, okay, if I can get used to a new keyboard, I will just keep going with this dictation, and eventually it should feel better. I don't know that it ever feels natural to me, but now there are times that I do think, I'll be typing something. I'll think, if only I could just dictate this, it would be so much faster.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I have to say the idea of 2,000 to 3,000 words in sort of 30 minutes.
But then there's a lot of,
then you go through it all.
Yeah.
So actually it's probably, but nonetheless, yeah, well, maybe I'll revisit it at some point. Drafting is coming up for book 2. So, okay, let's talk about IngramSpark. I know this is a service that you use, and you've done a little bit of work for us in SPF on this front. I'm really interested in it because I will probably go exclusive with my book, but the print version, there's no reason not to have that wide everywhere.
Right,
and I know, first of all, you had an idea about IngramSpark being used during the pre-order period, even on Amazon.
Yes. And that's turned out to be a great thing for me. I didn't realize you could do that because KDP Print won't let you do pre-orders, print pre-orders. So, and I had readers emailing me. So I'm doing these long pre-orders, and I had mystery readers like print, and I had them emailing saying, where can I pre-order the print copy? And I was like, so I searched it out, and you can do a print pre-order through Ingram. And you do need a lot of lead time, because they start printing the books to ship them 4 to 6 weeks before your release date. So unless you're longer than that, it's probably not a good idea. But if you have a pre-order of 2 to 3 months, you can set up your book just like you would, like you're going to release it through Ingram. But you put the on sale date in the future, your release date. And then what I do is I upload the file that I get back from my proofreader. So whenever I have that, I upload the one I get back from the copy editor. So I know that there's still a proofread to go, and I just make sure that I go in and change that file out, because you have to upload a file.
Right. So, there has to be something there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's very easy. And once you get it going, it flows through to Amazon and to Barnes & Noble and Waterstones and all the different places they distribute, and then people can pre-order it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great.
So it's really...
Can you use the same, if you've bought your ISBNs, presumably you can use the same ISBN that you use on Amazon?
Yes.
So that's indexed.
That's the easiest.
Yeah. Best way of doing it. And if you've got your ISBN from Amazon, this is getting very techie now, but if you've ticked the box to say, I'll have your ISBN when you're doing your print-on-demand version on Amazon, that you can't use that elsewhere, I don't think, can you? No,
you can't use that. But Ingram now also has that where you can use one of their ISBNs. So you don't really need an ISBN, but I bought, you can buy them in groups of like 100 or 500. Yeah. So I have a big group that I bought. And so that's what I use, because then I can use the same one at both places.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
And in terms of your distribution wider, why should you use IngramSpark and not use a service like Draft2Digital or Publish Drive and go through them with print?
Well, I haven't personally used Draft Digital's print option, so I don't know like what its advantages are or disadvantages. I mean, it would be nice to have everything consolidated at Draft Digital if you're already using them. That might be a good thing to do. For me, I knew when I started doing print, I looked at the sales I was getting through KDP print, and I saw that I was getting a lot of sales that were like 23 cents or 42 cents. And that's the expanded distribution because KDP print, basically, they're doing what Ingram would do. So they're taking a cut every time you sell. Like if you sell a print book on Barnes & Noble through KDP print, Amazon is taking their cut of the distribution. So I thought, that's really not a lot. And let me see if I can explore this IngramSpark thing because Joanna Penn was talking about it. So I looked into it and I realized it's not a lot, but I can make around $2 for each print copy I sell through Barnes & Noble, Waterstones. So basically I use KDP print for the Amazon stores, and then I use IngramSpark for Barnes & Noble and, bookstores, indie bookstores, everyone else basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. Well, I think I might well go down that route, if nothing else, just so I can explore IngramSpark and use it. I am interested in the company and the services. And I know they've been improving a lot in recent years. So yeah, that's one for me to dig into.
It's different from Amazon in that it's a wholesale model. So you have to set a discount, and we went into all that in the course, like different options you have, and you don't have to set a high discount. You can set a low discount. And as long as your books are in there, bookstores can order them. And that's another thing that a lot of bookstores don't want to order stock from Amazon, or they won't.
Yeah.
And a lot of libraries can't because they're set up to order through like Ingram or someone else. So you have more ability to have your book in more places if you're in Ingram, but then you have to figure out your discount, and that kind of puts people off. But and
this is a discount to wholesalers.
Yes.
So somebody who's going to retail your book, as opposed to it being sort of there for purchase by Kobo or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So it's a completely different model, and we're not used to that because almost everyone else we deal with, we just put in our price, and the company that's distributing takes their cut, and then they give us the rest. And so this isn't that same model. The bookstores get a discount, and then they make their money between the discount and the price they set. So, if you have a really tiny discount, it's not worth it to them because they're going, I can't make any money off this, So there's some issues there that are unusual for indie authors, but I've found it to be worth it. And I think it varies according to genre, because I know mystery readers love print books and other genres may not be as into buying print. So I would say check your KDP print sales. And if you have a lot going through expanded distribution, then it's probably worth looking into.
Yeah. Okay. And final sort of nerdy question on this front is pricing. You set a price for your KDP print on demand book. Do you have to match that in IngramSpark? Are there dangers from deviating from that?
It's not like KDP, where I know people who have a higher IngramSpark price, but I don't tend to do that because it's just too confusing for me. I'd rather have all my prices the same across all retailers. And then that way it doesn't seem unfair if somebody's a Barnes & Noble shopper or whatever. But I don't think there's anything technically about that. But it would require deeper research, because I do know that when you sign up and agree to the terms of service at a lot of the retailers, you're agreeing not to put your book at a lower price anywhere else. So you'd have to dig in and find out if that applies to the print as well. So that's something that I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, no, it gets a bit complicated. There's an T's buried in the terms. And what price do you set your paperbacks at, out of interest?
Well, right now I'm doing $13.99 for my trade paperbacks. I started out at $11.99 because I wanted to be, I wanted it to look like a good deal. But what I didn't realize was that it's better to go a little bit higher than lower, because Amazon a lot of times will discount your paperback price and you're paid off the higher price, off your list price. So I was kind of hurting myself by going $11.99. So now I do $13.99 on my trade paperbacks. I've experimented with a hardcover through IngramSpark, and that is $26.99, which seems really high, but that's kind of in line with traditionally published hardbacks. And then I have a case laminate hardback large print. That's the kind with the cover is glued to the backings.
Right.
And libraries in the U.S. love those. So that's why I did that. And I priced that
Hard
one at
wearing.
Yes, lasts forever.
Yeah.
So, and that one I priced at $29.99, which to me is really high. But the libraries, if they're ordering through Ingram, they're getting that discount. And that's the price that most large print are kind of in that range in my genre. So.
And is there a lot to do in terms of the cover specifications and the formatting for this?
Some people I know have used the same cover that they've uploaded at KDP Print. I've never been able to do that. And if you do your own covers and can if you're good at Photoshop, I think you could there's minor adjustments. But I just tell my cover artist, I'm going to need a cover for KDP Print and a cover for IngramSpark.
Okay.
And they're basically the same.
Yeah.
But there's just tiny little variations on each one.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, it's a fascinating area. There's a lot to this game, and you're a specialist in small areas, which is a really useful thing. Well,
it's good for my genre, so that's why I've looked into it.
Yeah. And it's the 101 course, isn't it? I think your module on IngramSpark. Yes.
Yeah, it's in I think the Vault.
In the Vault, the Tech Library.
Tech Library.
Yes,
that's it.
the Vault's something else, but in the Tech Library. So if you're a 101 student, you can hear Sarah's voice. In fact, I think when does this? No, I think 101 will be closed probably by the time this goes out, but next time for those people. Yeah. Good. Well, Sarah, thank you very much indeed for coming on.
You're welcome. It's been fun.
Fount of knowledge. Well done for your success, which is brilliant. I'm sure we're going to work together again in the future, and maybe even, who knows, Sarah, we might even be in the same room at the same time again, as we have been in the past at conferences.
We are so looking forward to that. All the writers want to get back to the conferences, which is
I can't wait. Yeah. We've got our flights booked, but we're still having to cross fingers, aren't we? Because we don't really know what's going to happen. But we've booked, which is the most we can do. Sarah, thank you so much indeed. Good luck, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for having me.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Love Sarah's soft voice. She could talk to me all day. Like syrup in your ear, Mark.
I'm not going to get involved in that nonsense, but yes, it's an interesting interview, and it's definitely one of the bigger genres. And we see quite a few authors doing really well in cozy.
Yeah. And
variants of cozy. Witchy cozies is another quite popular genre.
Food cozies.
Food cozies, yeah, exactly. There's lots of
I don't know what they're called, but it's always a chef, isn't it, to do with food and a murder in the kitchen. Yes, you can see why it's a good genre. It's a big genre. It's very attractive and easy reading, and the TV programs. I think my wife watches Agatha Raisin. I don't know if that's made it over to the United States, but it's a classic cozy mystery. What's the village where a murder happens every week? They had
Midsummer Murders.
Midsummer Murders, yeah, huge. That must have made it to America.
Craig Martell is obsessed with Midsummer Murders, which I've never understood. But
no,
I think people do think that is what living in England is like.
Dangerous.
And of course, they're right. It is a very dangerous place to live.
The villages.
Mean streets of Salisbury.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, I loved having that chat with Sarah. Thank you very much indeed to her for being my guest. Now, I have an episode coming up in the near future. I've interviewed both the editors I work with on my book, so we'll try and do that in a couple of weeks. But I had a very interesting exchange with Jenny Nash, which is going to involve you, me, Jenny, and another person in Vegas in our shorts and T-shirt to play something called pickleball.
Okay, I'll pass.
You're not passing. You're my partner, because the reason is it's being taken up by people around our age in big numbers in America. It's a big growth sport, and it's particularly
around our age.
Yes, our age, and it's particularly for people who used to play tennis or table tennis, and which you used to be on the edge of the England squad. Did you not? You once told me.
I did. Yeah.
For table tennis. Jenny was quite a handy tennis player, I have to let you know. So you need to practice. Anyway, they have a pickleball stadium in the Bally's Hotel. So we're on.
Christ. Okay.
You better start watching some YouTube videos.
I will, yes.
Okay, look, that's it. I've got some golf to go to. We've got some Hello Books emails to send out. We'll update you on all of these projects from time to time as they go on. And I think that is probably it. Mark.
All right. That's a goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from him. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishingshow. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with The Self-Publishing Show.